You're listening to the Stories of Subi podcast, which has been produced for the Subi East project. The Stories of Subi are brought to you by DevelopmentWA in collaboration with Creating Communities Australia. The Subi East area has a rich history, and we're bringing you conversations with the people who can provide interesting perspectives on the great memories, history, and changes they've seen. Dr. Maureen Helen has had an amazing life. She's been a midwife, a family counsellor, a CEO, a writer, blogger, and mum. Throughout her adventures, she's grown up in and around Subiaco's ovals, hospitals, markets, and gardens, and she's going to reminisce about some of those memories. Maureen, tell me about spending time at your grandmother's house when you were younger.
I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, and I'm not sure why I did, except that I loved it. And it was in Holyrood Street, actually in West Leederville. But if you went across Cambridge Street, you were in Subiaco. And my grandmother used to take us on walks and do all the things grandmothers do. But one of the things that I sort of loved, but it was too far to walk, was to walk the kilometre or so from her house down to St Joseph's Church, where we went to Mass every single Sunday. And there were always Irish priests in St Joseph's Church, because I think, looking way back on that time, there were a lot of Irish people who actually settled in Subiaco. And of course my grandmother's parents and grandparents were Irish, came from Ireland and settled in the north of Western Australia, just north of Geraldton.
So did that community want to stick together?
I think all communities want to stick together, and it was based partly around Irish women who came by the boatloads after the famine that started in 1845 and went on till 1852, and they were starving, and many of them were in poorhouses, and so they came to Western Australia to settle, because what better place with one woman to every 10 men?
Really? Is that why people came here?
So some of them came as convicts, some of them came, but boatloads of women were actually shipped to partner to marry these Irish fellows. And so I grew up in a house full of Irish women. My grandmother had 4 girls and 1 son. I grew up during the war because I was born in 1937. I was in that very formative age. And so there were all these beautiful Irish women, and I guess I caught a bit of that.
Tell me about St Patrick's Day at Subi Oval.
So they had these great big public festivals. That's exactly what they were. And they were always on the 17th of March. And they had it for the years of my schooling, or the years that I can remember sort of as an older child. We went to the St Patrick's Day Mass and sort of party afterwards on Subiaco Oval. There was, first of all the kids from Catholic schools all around Perth were dressed in our best clothes, which included a serge uniform with a blouse underneath and gloves and hats, and you weren't allowed to take any of those things off till after Mass. And all these extremely well-dressed, very hot kids would gather on the Oval, and they celebrated Mass in Latin, of course. And we sang very Irish hymns. Then we had sort of a sports day, but there wasn't much in the world. There weren't too many sports. I think it was mostly athletics, and only the kids who were pretty able were invited to be part of that because it was competitive.
Sounds like a huge deal.
Well, I was a little girl, I was a child, but it felt like a big deal. And possibly the reason why it stopped was because of the first polio epidemic in 1952.
You grew up and started working at King Edward's?
It's one of those children of the generation that their parents said they had to leave school at 14, and so I was just 14 when I left school, and I went to a business college and learnt to be a typist, and my heart nearly broke because I wanted to stay at school. But when I was 17, I went to Royal Perth Hospital and did my general nursing training in the apprenticeship system, and that lasted for 3 years. Then I came to King Edward and worked as and trained as a midwife, and I've had dealings on and off with King Edward almost ever since, up till last year when I resigned from the Community Advisory Council of King Edward.
You've had so many shifts, so many things happen in your life, different careers, changing of personal circumstances. What kept you in and around this area? Why have you stayed?
Why would you go anywhere else? It's a beautiful area. I moved into an apartment with my husband 2 years ago, and we wished we'd done it 10 years ago. I could never have imagined living in an apartment, but I love it. It's a great lifestyle for older people. I think it's a good lifestyle for younger people too, given the parks, beautiful walks. Everything's so central, and it's a lovely lifestyle. There's a tiny baby just round the corner of the corridor, and it's lovely to see children going to school and they greet us, we talk to them. There are people probably getting towards, at 82 and 83, we're getting towards being the oldest in the community and in the place, but there is a 93-year-old and she chats and we talk, and I grew up in Mount Lawley, and this is as close to feeling home as I've felt as an adult.
How have you seen Subiaco change?
When I was a child, Subiaco and North Perth were very much workers' homes, workers' cottage, but we used to kind of look down on Subiaco. Oh, they live in Subiaco. Oh, they live in Maylands. You know, it was a bit like that. And it's a terrible thing to say, but it's such a beautiful place and has always been, with Lake Munga on one side, and it's just a beautiful place.
So what would you like to see moving forward?
I just trust the Subiaco Council will continue to do the job that it's done, and I expect it will continue to have beautiful parks and public art and walkways and cycleways, and the thing that I would like most would be to see that people could walk, and especially children could walk with safety around their community.
Tell me about your blog.
Oh, my blog started because I needed a new hobby. I do move around. I have had a lot of jobs. I've had a lot of interests. And I thought, I can do this. I'm going to set up my own blog. And that was in about 7 years ago. And I loved it, and I just maintain it. And it's called How to Be 80. My blog is kind of all over the place, like an old woman's washing. It has. And I just love doing it. And I go to a social media mastermind class so that I can learn to do new things and keep up with it. I do write about Subi, and I write about I've written about the murals, I've written about living in an apartment. I do that often. I've written about favourite parks. I've written about park life, how we sometimes take a barbecue and meet children and grandchildren in one of the parks and have a barbecue. Because we can, why wouldn't you do it? Because it's easy and beautiful. And about how interesting and exciting it is to live in a place where everything changes, where the art changes, but the basics are the same.
Thanks for listening to the Stories of Subi podcast. It was created by Creating Communities Australia for DevelopmentWA.